So fuck yes, welcome back to the Hype. I'm your host, as always, Bryan Dressel. With me, as always, is Jonathan Hardesty.
Howdy, howdy.
Chewie Darsow.
There's always conditions.
Emily Blake.
Hey, y'all.
And special guest today, Mr. Eric Stoltz.
Hello.
Hi, Eric.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing great. I am already sweating at the thought of having to defend things that I enjoy.
Well, good luck.
Welcome to the internet. Welcome to the internet.
I didn't know the internet would be like this.
Eric,
Neither did the people that invented the internet.
I know.
Wait,
Al Gore?
it's all
Yeah, thanks a
trolls
lot,
and
Al
porn?
Gore? Way to go,
Trolls
Al.
and porn is
Yeah.
the internet? Yeah, pretty
And
much.
troll porn.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
they really should have seen the troll
Terrifying
porn
Venn
coming. Eric, do you have anything you want to plug quick before we get started?
No, sure. I mean, you could follow me on Twitter at Eric J. Stolz. That's about as exciting as my life is right now.
Well, you've written some articles that I've read.
Oh, sure, yeah. I do some magazine writing for Flood Bryan is my manager. He's got my back.
Just the major pieces of writing.
Yeah, I have the pleasure of doing some magazine writing at a magazine called Flood. You can go to floodmagazine.com, and I get to... usually I write about comedy, so I get to interview comedians I love, review comedic movies that I wind up enjoying more often than not. So that's usually where you can find my stuff.
And you also do something with children.
And I also do something with children.
That's vague and creepy.
The less said about that, the better.
Oh.
I volunteer at a nonprofit called 826LA. They are my home away from home in Los Angeles, which is itself a home away from home. So check out 826la.org. It's a tutoring center and writing lab that gets kids excited about writing. So if you have an existential crisis in Los Angeles and you find yourself wishing you were doing something really meaningful...
That is
with
literally
your time-
everyone in Los Angeles.
Right, exactly. So 99% of people who live here, if you've got an hour to spare throughout the week, consider volunteering there. It's a fantastic quality of life.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, then we're going to jump right into a Where Have You Been Doing? I will go first. I saw the movie Good Time. Anybody else heard of it?
What
Seen
is
it?
what is this?
Robert Pattinson?
Robert Pattinson.
hear it's very good.
Yeah, it is. It's a very good movie. I know we've been at odds the past couple of episodes on whether or not you should watch trailers. Don't watch the trailer. You can listen to me tell you about it. It's about a guy whose brother gets in prison, and he spends the entire night throughout the underbelly and disgusting parts of New York trying to figure out a way to get his brother out of jail as fast as possible because his brother's mentally ill, and he's afraid he's going to get hurt. If you watch the trailer, nearly every major plot point will be spoiled all the way up to and including the end.
Oh.
Yay.
I did not know. I watched the trailer after I saw it because I had not seen the trailer. We were literally just talking. She was like, "You should go see that movie because get out of the house."
Facebook has been oddly target advertising me about it.
That's
Like every day I open my Facebook and Robert Pattinson is Storm in da-da-da movie. You'll never understand how good he is. And I'm like, okay.
You clicked on something.
I did at some point. Like it's just,
Or you just talked about him.
I think
and
it's just
Facebook heard you.
your clear love of Twilight.
This is what I'm like I want to post about being terrified of clowns, but I'm afraid once I do, I'm just going to see nonstop
yeah,
it
You will.
everywhere
Oh,
on my
you will.
timeline.
Don't even address
So
it.
I just don't even say the word clown. I'm trying not to say the word it
you should,
anywhere.
yeah, you should try not to use it in your
Yeah,
words
just
anymore.
don't.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Just say
yeah.
that. One of these.
Things.
But yeah, so like after not seeing the trailer and seeing the movie, like I'd seen like a 30-second like Robert Pattinson in a movie, and that was all I'd seen. But after going back and watching like the full-on 2-minute theatrical trailer, like it ruins the movie. And it's one of those trailers that hides it really well. Like you're watching, like I'm sure this doesn't spoil everything, and then you're sitting there and like there's key scenes in the trailer. Like I haven't seen this part yet, and it's about over, so now I know exactly what's about to happen.
That sucks.
Yeah.
And it's really upsetting because these guys, the two brothers and Robert Pattinson, put a lot of time and effort into making a very good movie that really wants to feel dangerous, and you don't like anybody in it, but you're still kind of rooting for them. And it was a really kind of tough story to pull off, and they did a great job. But this trailer just fucking ruined
Sometimes I
it.
feel like marketing departments hate movies.
It
Well,
really feels like that sometimes.
It's maybe that, but like also with a movie like this, it's not a major blockbuster, a superhero, or a thing that we're automatically going to go to, like a
It's
Star
got
Wars.
Robert Pattinson.
So they suddenly have to basically show you the whole movie in the hopes that maybe you'll buy it on VOD one day. I feel like the floor dropped out somewhere there.
That was
on
the
that.
problem I had with Get Out.
Yeah.
One of my favorite movies of the year, but I remember the trailer just really walking you hand in hand through the entire movie, right up to the point that I think the last shot of the trailer is Daniel Kaluuya just like
I haven't seen this movie.
Just
And I'm not
just
spoiled.
You've
doing
never
something
seen Get
great.
Out?
No.
He's
How
doing
did you-
that
Whatever you're
stuff.
about to say, don't say it.
If
Because I'm
I'll-
still not spoiled on whatever this is. I know I
That's
need to see this movie like
Oh,
right now.
Literally
Listen.
impossible. I don't know
Good
how
job.
that's possible.
Good job. Good
I
job.
know.
Wow, imagine if you got 10 months into this movie existing and then
I know.
some
I need to
jerk
fucking
at a
watch it
table
right.
was
I know.
like,
I keep going. I
and
need to
they're
watch
on
it
the
right now
moon the
because I
whole
haven't been
time.
spoiled on whatever.
I mean, just to give you an example, I was
keeps-
spoiled on last
That is the
week's
ending
Game
of
of
Get
Thrones
Out. They're on the moon the whole
before
time.
it even started, the whole season.
Yeah.
So,
It's pretty upsetting
yeah.
and just unnecessary.
But yeah, I feel like it's not so much the marketing department hates the movies. They don't know what to do with these movies anymore, and they have to suddenly make this thing a big success. Like you're working out of a negative, like you're at a deficit already.
But it's not just the little movies. I mean, it's like how people give me flack for not watching Star Wars trailers. They're like, it doesn't spoil anything. I'm like,
When
it does.
Ryan Johnson
No
and Mark
matter
Hamill
what,
just came out and
it
said, "Don't
does.
watch the trailers; they spoil episode 8."
I
Which
will
is
not
so
watch a
messed
single
up
trailer.
because you don't need Star Wars never needs to make another trailer, and we're all going to
No.
go see it in the
Just
theater.
Yeah.
The name and the date, we're all
Just
there.
a wedding RSVP.
Yeah.
It's like,
Pretty
save
much.
the date. Save the date, December 23rd.
A little mini chocolate lightsaber just sent to everyone's home with
Like,
a little note saying
you-
you're invited.
I want that.
So that's everything I have to say about my movie. Who would like to go next?
I'll go next.
Okay.
Just so that we can
All right.
all be quiet and contain ourselves. Because you already got your yelling out.
Did we get all our yelling out?
What could
I've
you-
never gotten my yelling out.
That's
What could
true.
what could make us all yell at each other before recording?
Game
Everything?
of Thrones,
Oh.
guys. Game of GOT, which is now auto-correcting from people writing out and other things on Facebook. It just assumes everyone's talking about Game of Thrones.
Got.
I can't write the word "got" without having all capitalized now.
Mein Gott.
The latest episode. I don't believe it was as good as Emily thinks. I don't
Rad.
believe it's as bad as Brian thinks.
Okay, so we're on the same page.
I had
Figuratively.
problems. I do have problems with the timeline. It's true.
Oh, the
it's just,
timeline's garbage.
it's just because one of the things that I did enjoy the Miranderingness of the previous seasons.
Meandering?
Meanderingness.
I can say that word, parent, or I can't. I don't know.
Meandery.
It takes time to get places. Westeros is supposed to be this big, vast thing of 7 kingdoms, and people travel between them, and it takes time. And we got to see that before, but now they're on a more of a crunch. They're like, all right, we only got 8 episodes left. Everyone's got to get really fast. Gendry is now an Olympic sprinter. And just
That is the least of the problems time-wise with that episode.
it's just it's weird.
Yeah.
It's a
I don't
self-imposed
like it.
timeline. That's the problem. They
Yeah, I
crunched
don't like
themselves.
it.
They chose this amount of episodes.
I'm more than I'm mad at the previous, more than mad at how they're writing it right now. I am mad at all the fans that have been complaining that the show moves too slowly. So now they're like, all right, everyone would shut up about how slow everything's taking. So now we're gonna speed it up. And now everyone's annoyed at how fast it's going. I'm like, well, this is what you asked for, you assholes.
And that's the thing is like, because then there are people like me in the middle who are like, no, it wasn't. It was going a little too slow, but you don't have to go that fast. Maybe pick up the pace and make a thing happen instead of not
But
having
that-
anything
and
happen
that
in 2
works
seasons.
into-
That's good for me.
Yeah. But that works into what Brian was saying, where they feel like they're doing a little too much fan service at this point. And it is getting a little glaring that they no longer have any source material. I don't know how much R.R. Martin's whispering in their ear and how much he's not.
Well, we all know he's not writing the book.
Yeah. So,
Fucker.
personally,
You're not
I'm
gonna be
looking
insistent
forward
on that
to
book now.
the ending. I'm looking forward to tomorrow's, or last week's more so, episode. And
I can't believe
I'm
John
hoping it's gonna
died,
be
right?
really good.
Oh,
I would have been okay if that had ended before. I guess I won't spoil it before somebody shows up. Like if it had ended with them in peril instead of like resolving it, because I was really fucking nervous.
Yeah, I
and
would have been
scared at
fine
the
with
end of
that.
it. I would have been okay
didn't
with
need
the
to see the
cliffhanger
fight.
ending
If
on
we had
that,
had
yeah.
the cliffhanger and then Daenerys comes in with the dragon later, that would have been
Beep.
better. It would have been better.
yeah.
2 more things.
It's that troll
Costumes.
porn I keep hearing about.
Costumes, fantastic. One of the greatest things in this
costumes.
season I am loving is that all of the women look amazing.
They do.
They all look empowered. They all look like their clothing is totally reflecting who they are at a person and where they have become in the show. And it's just gorgeous.
I love
One of the things that I'm...
John just got fingered.
Because I'm trying to finish.
It wasn't as good.
I am disappointed that the show hasn't had any great lines. The one line that they had was "chaos is a ladder," but that was a reference to a previous season.
Season 1.
Yeah, that's a line that had already been used. And like last season, we got a ton of lines like, I forgot Tyrion's thing. I'll be like, I am wise, that's why I drink, or something like that.
I drink and I know things.
I drink and I know things. We don't have any of that this season, which I think is another showcase that these writers are losing steam.
This season we have.
Yeah.
That's a dragon yell.
And Ben.
Oh, okay,
Okay,
because
all right,
there was at
okay.
least 3 people who
bend the
did that.
knee. I guess we do have that.
Yeah, but that's no
That's
fun.
not as
So
good. It's
tired.
not
That's
as
just something.
good.
That's just something that just keeps popping up. It's
Yeah.
just like something that keeps being.
That's not
going
going to look
more
great
than
on a
it's quote.
t-shirt.
Yeah,
Depends on what club you're at.
they're forcing it into a meme, and
See-
it's like that's not an interesting enough phrase.
You need a picture
but
of
so,
Emilia
so
Clarke.
I'm just really worried about the writing right now.
Yeah.
That's valid. Every time I see Daenerys, I just try to make sense of her braids. Like I know she's talking, but I'm just like I need to follow. It's
Yeah,
like
I
a
am
puzzle.
that.
Where
It's
does
like
it
a
start?
tangled
For
up Christmas.
cosplay, that's going to be a
Also,
real bitch.
I know.
I love that her outfit
Months.
can change based off of the climate.
I know-
So she's got
okay,
her snow
okay,
outfit
guys, but
and
she was-
her like rain outfit, and
That's
they
my
all like
one
look the
thing.
same.
We need to move on. We need to move on.
I did my point,
I
so
know.
I'm good.
We need to keep going. We have a whole battle today.
Okay.
The Battle of the Bastards.
I will talk about. I've started watching Star Wars Clone Wars, not the because a lot of people don't know there are actually 2 Star Wars Clone Wars.
The good one or the 3D one?
Well, I've already seen the good one multiple times.
Pre-Disney,
I have that one. I
post-Disney.
own that one. But I started watching the newer one. And it's interesting though. I mean, I'm watching it. I know it started airing. Like this is the 3D one. And I do respect that they're not trying to make us like Anakin. It's sort of like Anakin's done. You hate him already. It's more like watching Ahsoka be like, "Hey, Anakin, stop being an asshole." And he's just like, "Oh, right. I'm not supposed to be an asshole. Okay."
Yeah.
But what if I was an asshole?
Later, I'm definitely going to kill everybody.
Okay, yeah, for sure.
Younglings, watch out!
Feelings.
Are you enjoying the show? Because I was really hit and miss on it.
I'm okay so far. I kind of like it. I like that we're following stormtroopers or
Yeah.
clones. I guess they're clones now. I like that I do like the speech that Yoda gives in the first episode where he's like, they're like, "Oh, we're just clones," and he's like, "Wait, yeah, but you're 3 unique people." And that
The
sort
first
of
episode's great.
Yeah, first episode's really good. And I'm not that far in. I'm still in season 1.
Well,
But-
eventually they bring in for one episode Darth Bane, who is my favorite character in
I've
all
heard,
of Star
I've
Wars.
heard.
So because he's in that, he is now officially canon, and that just warmed my heart.
Yeah, I've heard that he's in that. I'm looking like the reason I started watching is just because so many of my friends keep referring to things from that series, and and so I was like, well, I should watch this. And then somebody asked me to make him an Ahsoka bow, hair bow, and I was just like, oh, well, I don't really. I mean, I know what she looks like, but I don't really know anything about her. So I was like, I'll watch this episode and see what she's all about. And now I'm getting
Cool.
into it.
Cool. So I finished all of iZombie on Netflix finally. Finished seasons 2 and 3.
I didn't watch 3 yet.
Okay. Then I won't
Everyone
spoil it.
is a zombie. Everyone, everywhere.
I still left off on when they killed Matchbox 20 guy.
Oh, that was so funny.
There's ice dragons.
Wait, Rob Thomas is
Yeah.
on Ice
Oh,
Zombie?
Oh my
the
God.
finale of season
Yes.
2 is amazing.
It's so
so
good.
good.
Do you have any interest in the show?
But now I do.
Rob
But
Thomas.
I won't ruin what it happens.
So-
Well, Rob Thomas is the creator of the show, and he's always getting confused with Rob Thomas, the singer.
Oh, because that's the gentleman who did Veronica Mars.
Yes.
And Party Down. And,
Yeah.
So
But
Rob
it's really-
Thomas enjoys the joke.
Oh my
Music,
God.
Matchbox 20, Rob Thomas.
the
Oh my
finale
God.
for season 2 is so satisfying. And I was waiting for season 3 to be done to just stream it later, and I haven't gotten to it yet.
Oh, damn.
yeah, no.
So
it's,
is it good?
Yeah, it's good. It's maybe it's just because I binged it, but it was losing some steam for me in season 3. Just maybe because I was watching like 3 or 4 episodes a night and losing sleep, but it's still fun. And I like that it's a show that has stakes where things that happen like don't necessarily revert back, or if they do, they revert back but kind of different. So it's like that you can never go home thing, where it's like you've come back to the status quo, but man, the status quo is now different.
Yeah.
And I like that. I like how the characters are evolving, and the show is just so cheeky and funny, and the characters are really likable. And I can't wait for season 4 or whatever to get onto Netflix.
They did such a
Well,
great job.
in your
at-
downtime, watch Power Rangers RPM.
I still miss Lowell. That's the British guy.
oh,
She
wait.
fucked that British guy for a while, and he was in love with her, and then he died
Oh,
for her.
I was so nervous about
Sorry,
her
I spoiled that.
coworker. I thought you.
No, the British guy who was King Arthur on Merlin. God, does no one else but me care about Lowell?
Apparently.
Man, you
John's talking about
guys.
how he just watched 2 seasons.
I'm
He's
still
like,
really
"Lol,
upset
who?"
about his death. Like, really upset.
Wait, was he the rocker guy who sacrificed himself?
Yes!
Oh, he was nice.
He was amazing.
But I like the beefcake like as her boyfriend more. He's just kind of funny.
Yeah. He's grown on me, but
Eric is just like
I gotta start watching this show so I can ship all these hot British
But like,
people.
and, that's one nice thing is like everyone is even more attractive in season 3. So
Yeah,
if you
they are some hot ass zombies.
This is all I ask from TV shows that
Like-
everyone gets better looking.
that is on the
season by
CW.
season.
even the quote unquote villains are just so oozing with attractiveness and
Yeah.
beefcakiness. I'm just like,
It's great.
This is a fun thing to watch just for that. I could watch these people on mute.
Nice. I guess really quickly, I would just like to say I watched the new Death Note movie on Netflix yesterday.
Is that already out?
Yeah, it came out yesterday.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I know it's got, the controversy around it and things like that, so I won't really touch that. And, it's certainly an imperfect movie, but the reason why I would recommend it is because Lakeith Stanfield is so awesome and so strange in that movie. He is just taking a small role and doing such fascinating things with his performance. He's this kind of... He's a detective who's, following this trail of strange freak deaths. Yeah. So I'm not familiar with the anime or the manga. It's not really in my wheelhouse. So I was able to watch it, without a lot of reference to the source material. And I know that's part of what's controversial about this movie is that it seems to do away with a lot of that source material in a kind of disrespectful way. So if that's, something that's going to impede your enjoyment of the movie, maybe avoid that. But I think Lakeith Stanfield's one of the coolest and most interesting actors working right now, and this is definitely a case for that. He is eccentric, and the way that he delivers lines is very manic, but also very compelling. And he reminds me of how in Mark Ruffalo's early career, pretty much every role that he had some kind of weird characterization to it, some weird visual cue or tick or something that was just thoughtful in a way that a lot of actors, I think, tend to skip over in their process. So I would say watch it for Lakeith Stanfield. He is, I think, far and away the best part of the movie. And then go watch him in Atlanta. Because he's the best part of that show, too. In fact, he's the best part of everything he does. So just IMDb Lakeith Stanfield and get to work, goddammit.
Do you know how closely does it follow it to the end of the manga, or does it end? Do you know? Have you read anything?
I couldn't say because it's completely out of my reference point. But it ended in a way that I thought was kind of dissatisfying. I wouldn't be surprised if it had the same ending as the manga. If the manga delivered it maybe a little more satisfyingly.
So I've only read a little bit of it. I watched the whole show, and the ending of the show gets real. Blah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some dark things in the movie, and I was kind of glad they didn't pull any punches, but I think the real reason to see it is to just get excited about Lakeith Stanfield on the scene, because that dude is next level.
I will have to watch it, just out of sheer curiosity. But that's everybody, right? Mm-hmm. All right, so I think it's time to start our 200th episode.
Yes.
Woohoo! 200. We've been doing this for about 5 years, and we did 200 episodes. We skipped a few weeks.
Where's our cake?
I got
donuts.
donuts.
There's a bunch of little
Donuts
cakes.
and
I spent way too much money on donuts.
They were delicious. Thank you, Voodoo Donuts.
Yeah,
Give us
thanks,
donuts.
Brian.
Yeah.
Not everybody at
Donuts.
this table appreciates your donuts.
John's still
like I do.
crying at his donut.
John could not handle his donut. His donut
I
has
want
conquered
to
him.
eat the rest of my donut, but my stomach is also saying no.
I
I'm
could
wa-
finish both of your donuts.
I'm waiting until the episode's done. Then I'm going to bid farewell to this mortal coil and eat the rest of my donut.
He died doing what he loved.
Oh man,
Eating Fruit Loops on a donut.
I didn't even know it was possible.
All right, so for today's 200th episode, I mentioned it last week. So for dialing back just a little bit, taking a step back, 100 episodes ago, we did my favorite movie of all time, which I just saw yesterday in theaters, Terminator 2: Judgment Day, which is,
Yes.
I'm sorry for everybody at the table, it's still the best movie
Why are
ever
you
made.
apologize? Don't apologize to me. Leave me out of that.
I'm just saying, you have to defend a different movie.
I know.
So,
Yeah, Brian wouldn't let me defend Terminator 2 today.
because we've already talked about
I
it.
know.
And it's playing to the judge.
I wasn't here
Yeah,
then.
and it's playing to the judge for sure. So I figured for our 200th episode, we'll do everybody else's favorite movies, and then because I'm an asshole, I'll make just one of them in the winner, and everybody else has to argue about it, and I'll be the judge. So this is going to work out great for me and nobody else.
Fun.
We're all going to be... It's like War of the Roses. At the end of the movie, we're all going to be lying dead on the floor.
And I'll be watching one of the 4 movies.
Just your feet kicked up on one of our corpses
Yeah,
like a
yeah.
footstool.
I'll just put you into a pile, and then let's have a good footstool.
Yeah, like a love sack or
Yeah,
something.
they were perfect.
Well, to be fair, I would make a good ottoman.
Especially with all that Fruit Loop donut in there.
Oh yeah, it'd be a cushy ottoman. Oh man, I hate myself now.
Oh no!
Just eat more of that donut.
Yeah,
You'll
eat
feel
it.
better.
It'll make you feel. Yeah.
That's my sad donut. I can
Sugar
eat
makes you feel good. It's a science.
Yeah, science fact.
It's science I love.
So for today, we have, I'll name them all. We have Eric doing Barton Fink. Emily's doing In Bruges. John is doing Scott Pilgrim versus the World. That's the full title, correct?
Yep.
I just always call it Scott Pilgrim.
Yep.
And then Chewie's doing, it's some indie movie from the 70s.
You're not wrong.
Has a big talking bear in it. Chewie went way against type and picked Star Wars.
That's a funny sentence that you just said.
I mean,
on many levels.
If I pick anything else, it would just be like, why?
It's true. I was so close to saying Chewie can pick any movie but Star Wars because we've already done a whole episode on Star Wars.
Oh wait, so
But-
I can't pick Terminator 2, but she can pick Star Wars.
But
Okay, I see how it is.
when we did Star Wars, we did all 6 movies in one episode. We didn't just talk about one of them. And the guy who got Star Wars did a terrible job. Fuck Tony.
Oh,
Fuck
right.
Tony!
Aw.
That's a callback.
That's a
Previously
hashtag.
on After the Hype's Thrones.
you say after the Hype's Thrones.
Nice.
Yes, I did.
Spoiler alert. God. Who is Tony and why should I fuck him?
Just say fuck Tony.
Yeah.
Fuck Tony. I feel really coerced into this.
Tony knows you said it.
I'm sorry, whoever you are.
Tony.
Don't be
That's
sorry.
the funniest thing is he's one of the guys that went to Columbia with us.
Man, that school was a hedge maze.
It
There's
was.
so many people that are like, yeah, I went to Columbia same time as you, and I'm just like,
I love the thing where it's
I've
like-
never seen you before in my life.
Right. I like where people are like, oh, you went to Columbia? Did you know so and so? And they give me first, middle, and last name. And I'm like, no, it's a
Social
hedge maze.
security
Of a-
number.
Does everyone but me who comes on this podcast go to Columbia?
No.
No.
We
It's just been a trend
know
recently.
a lot of
Just-
Columbia
It's
people.
the
Same shit on my last podcast. I was like the only person who was not Jewish and from New York on every episode. And here I am, the only one who's not from Columbia.
We can convert you to being Jewish, but I can't make you live in New York.
And if you have like 200,000 spare dollars, you can just go to Columbia.
Yeah, I mean, they take everyone.
They do.
They do.
They don't. The enrollment is not hard.
If I had known that when I wrote the little "let me in" paper that they wanted to do, I would have been just like, "let me in." I would have saved myself hours.
It would have been 2 pages with just fart on repeat.
Yeah. They'd be like, wow, creative. Here's a scholarship.
This person's going to create change. Columbia jokes.
I'm in.
Anyhow, about our 200th episode. Who would like to go first?
Me.
Eric gets to go first. All right. So, Eric, if you did not read the email, which I think you did because you replied to it.
Might have been my intern.
read receipt.
So you have 5 minutes to state your case and why you have the best movie on the table. After that, we're going to take 5 minutes where I'll ask you questions. People around the table will tell you why you're wrong. Hopefully. Sometimes the people around the table get a little nice and they're just like, no, he's right. It's a good movie. And then it really falls apart for everybody else as your movie would win. So we're going to hope that doesn't happen and everyone can be a real asshole today.
I can be an asshole.
Well, let's hope she holds to that statement. So 5 minutes on why Barton Fink is the best movie on the table. Eric, you ready?
I'm ready.
Let her rip.
I think this is the best example of why the Coen brothers are the best filmmakers working right now, because for one thing, it's just a mastery of all the different tools in the toolbox of filmmaking. You've got perfect music from Carter Burwell. Roger Deakins' cinematography is just jaw on the floor gorgeous. I also just think that this is a movie that grows with me. You know, there's a lot of movies that I was into as like a teenager that now I try to go back to, and it's like trying to read a different language or something. It's like I can't fathom what I liked about it. But Barton Fink is ambiguous enough and odd enough that it always strikes me as a different movie every time I watch it. And I watch it about once a year. And, you know, as like a pretentious little brat screenwriter college student, I was like, wow, I'm so like Barton Fink sometimes. And now I watch it and I'm like, oh, I kind of relate to John Goodman more. Just like barely bridled rage and like nodding along with some egotistical jerk as he's just prattling on. And I'm like, yeah, you've got strong opinions about this. Good for you, you know? Like, but the point being that I think what's great about Barton Fink and what makes it a movie that grows with me as I'm getting older and as I'm changing as a person is that it's just a movie that allows permission to be weird as a storyteller. You know, it throws pretty much all conventional wisdom about how to tell a story for movies, like screenwriting craft, out the window, while still telling a really powerful story and still conveying interesting messages, interesting ideas, and a tone that is, I think, really singular to this movie. So I love that this is a movie that is just both self-loathing and hates movies and hates writers, and is also itself a great celebration for what's special about writing, what's special about movies. It gets to somehow do everything at once, and instead of it being this paradox that you can't approach, it's warm in a weird way. It's very disturbing, certainly, but it's also so funny. And every scene of this movie could be a standalone short film. It's hard to say that anything in this movie makes a ton of sense at the end of it, but I also love that I couldn't find a single line or a single moment that I would cut out of the film. So, to me, this is just the epitome of letting your freak flag fly as a fan of movies, stories, actors, writing, all of the above. And I'm just so stoked that every time I watch it, it just feels like a different movie that's still made just for me.
All right. You still have 2 minutes if you want to add anything else to it. If you
And
don't,
another thing.
you can forego those last 2 minutes. If
Well, I do think that, you know, I can just talk about John Goodman for the last 2 minutes alone. I mean, that dude is, I have decided after watching this again yesterday, that man is one of the best actors who's ever lived. Like, underrated doesn't begin to cover it for this man. This is someone who has done drama, pathos, comedy, slapstick, wit. I mean, this is somebody who is all in every time he walks up to the plate. And I got weirdly emotional watching it this time because I found myself siding with John Goodman's character so much. And, you know, spoiler alert for a, you know, decades old movie, but he turns out to be this total psychopath, a serial killer who lives in this hotel alongside Barton Fink, a playwright who has come out to Hollywood to try to become a screenwriter. And the joke is, of course, that Barton Fink is kind of a shitty writer because he is stuck in his own head and he doesn't listen to people. And this whole time, this interesting serial killer who's posing as an insurance salesman is sitting on his bed saying, "Oh, I've got some stories I could tell you." And Barton Fink's like, "Yeah, exactly. And I'm the man to tell them to the world." And I was just like, wow, I've been there, serial killer. Where I'm like, God, I need to be heard. I need to get my voice out there. And everybody around me is like, yeah, you're right. You should be heard. And another thing about me. And for some reason, like, that was the thing that really struck me about that this time. And who on planet Earth could make a lunatic, psychopath, serial killer more just, like, huggable than John Goodman? You know, like, even in recent memory.
He's done it a lot.
Yeah, for sure. He's like such a scary dude, but it's also like, God, I just want to give him a teddy bear squeeze. Like, look at Cloverfield Lane, you know? It's like, it's so hard to hate this villainous, horrible man because he's John fucking Goodman. And
I hated him in Cloverfield Lane. Like, he made my skin crawl.
Oh, me too. And yet, by the end of it, I was like, "Oh, don't leave him. He's a teddy bear." I know it's a problematic read, but I'm not trying to sympathize with the monster. But I'm just saying, like, John Goodman can take the most cliche thing in the world, the most like underwritten villain, and make him so fully embodied. And it's so exciting to watch the best performance from one of the best actors.
there it is. Whew. Oh, you weren't kidding. You did have full 2 minutes of John Goodman.
I had approximately 2 minutes. I don't have any other thoughts about John Goodman tonight. This is actually the only movie I've seen him in. This and Cloverfield.
All right, so 5 minutes to say why it isn't as good of a movie. Now, the only thing that I can usually come up with for Coen Brothers movies, they're the one of two directors that actually own books about, so deck is a little stacked in your favor, which we're going to work against. The ending. Coen Brothers have ending problems. Either you can agree with that or disagree with that, but they definitely have very distinct Coen Brother endings. Mm-hmm. What do you think happened at the end?
At the end, I think he is in hell of his own creation, you know? Like the thing that every writer and every creative can make better than any other type of person on Earth is their own worst nightmare, you know? And I think that the end of this movie is an embodiment of that, where he has drank his own Kool-Aid, so to speak. He's let his own ego, his own head win, and now he's going to be stuck in this purgatory of a Los Angeles, perhaps for the rest of his life.
Okay, so that's existentially what happened. But what happens literally at the end on the beach when he's seeing the girl from, like, what do you think is actually going on story-wise?
Oh, I think he just sits there and he meets a woman who looks a lot like a woman that is in a framed painting, because hashtag coincidences. And then it's got this fantastic last line where because she's so beautiful, he says, "Oh, are you in pictures?" And she just looks at him like he's an idiot and says, "Don't be silly." Which is, of course, a punchline because this man's life has been destroyed, basically, in the name of movies. Not to mention other people have been murdered in this, like, hotel for wanderers through Los Angeles. And she just goes, "No, why would anyone waste their time with movies?" Which is just, like, such a fantastic, like, fuck you ending in many ways.
It is.
Yeah.
To break your movie down a little bit and be like, it is a great movie. Don't get me wrong, but it is a movie about writing. It's a movie about writing movies. It's an industry film, essentially. And on level of, like, interest and impact in cinema for other people, you lose a lot of people. You're already losing people because it's period. You're losing people because it's Coen's, because there's a lot of people that don't like their movies. And then you're losing people because it's about making movies. So there's a lot stacked against it with just it being an important film for the masses or whatnot. And he's very up his own ass. I mean, you talked about that, but sometimes when watching this movie, I'm just cringing.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, oh, he's like a 19-year-old that's going into film school and thinks he's going to change the world.
That's why I couldn't finish Barton Fink. I watched a little bit of it, and I don't know how far I got, but I was just like, it's so self-indulgent. It's so insider trading. It's so, like, yeah, exactly all those things you just said. And I have a lot of trouble with movies about screenwriters in general because it does feel so like, aren't we the center of everything? And so I don't know. I mean, so in fairness, I haven't seen the whole movie, but it's because I lost interest for that very reason that you just said.
One of my favorite things about the industry, though, is every department thinks they're the most important part.
Yeah.
And they're all right.
100% right.
How can you have this without my script? Well, how can you have your script without my shooting? How can you have it without me putting stuff in frame? How can you have it without an actor?
Yes. How can you do this without Fruit Loops and Cocoa Puffs on a table in the corner? No, it's valid.
Well, if you don't have an editor, nothing's happening with any of it.
I mean, they're all kind of right. I was joking in the beginning, but, they
It's-
are.
That's actually what I love
We
about
all have
filmmaking
important
is the
roles.
fact that everybody works together as a team and really nobody's more important. That everybody's needed to get it done. I do love that. But that's what I love about filmmaking. This is about the writing at this is about that. This isn't about like the teamwork. This is about one dude being like me.
Honestly, though, one part of this film that I wish they had, I mean, it's very much Barton Fink. It's called Barton Fink, so we're
Right.
with him the whole time. If we could have strayed off a little bit and hung out with that producer,
Oh, Tony Shalhoub.
yeah, just like especially when he's like, we're at war now with the Japs. And I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah.
this man seems fascinating.
Oh,
I want to spend time with him.
The exec?
The
guy
exec,
Oh, yeah,
sorry.
Michael Lerner. He was nominated for an Oscar for
I
that.
want I want
Deserved
a
it.
spin-off
Oh, very
movie.
much so, yeah.
I want a spin-off movie about like because we already got a day in a life kind of when they did Hail Caesar.
Oh,
So
yeah.
can we just do another one, but
That's
on
a
that
good call.
character?
Yeah, because they both take place in Capitol Pictures. That's
Yeah.
one thing that a lot of people didn't catch about Hail Caesar, but I did because I watched Barton Fink too much. Is that they both take place for the same motion picture
It's a very
studios.
different character. Like
Oh, yeah, to say the
in
least.
Hail Caesar,
yeah.
he's much more like a common man,
Yeah, for
not
sure.
the crazy exec.
Yeah, not this absolute.
But I want to
loon.
see a movie about the crazy exec.
Yeah.
All right. So that's everything on Barton Fink.
Also, it is really worth saying that Emily, you probably would not be able to guess where the second half of that movie went.
Okay.
If you
Maybe
if you
I'll
were
try
to
to
guess.
watch it again and I'll just power through the first one.
I even if you just started the midway point, you might be pleasantly surprised at
Watching Barton Fink go mad is pretty satisfying.
Oh yeah, I mean the Coens hate their characters, and like 9 out of 10 of them, with the exception
Yeah.
of like Marge from Fargo and some other examples. Like the Coens create characters to punish. They create like Grimm's fairy tale cautionary tales. Like that's just it. Is that it's all intentional. Like yeah, he's horrible and he's awful and hard to watch, but it's all there with purpose and intention behind it. IMO.
So I will let you pick who goes next.
I'm going to choose Emily.
Okay.
So Emily, you get 5 minutes on why In Bruges is your favorite movie of all time.
Done.
Go.
Okay, so I saw this movie in the theater when it came out, and on the drive home, all I could think was, I am garbage. I am the worst screenwriter in the history of everything because this movie is so great and I'll never be that good. But I made it my mission in life to like try to be as good as this film is. And I went home and immediately started a rewrite on my latest project, like inspired by this film, because In Bruges is about we don't know they're hitmen at first, but there are hints. 2 hitmen who are hiding out in Bruges in Belgium, and we don't know why for a while, and then we find out why, and then the entire movie changes. This script is tighter than a virgin on prom night, guys. This is like...
Wait, wouldn't she be loose on prom night?
Not the beginning of the night.
No.
Does that
Before
count
and
against
after.
my 5 minutes?
Let's
Just
spend
keep
5
going.
minutes unpacking
Just
that.
keep going.
Okay. So everything that happens in the beginning of the movie comes back around again to have an impact, and that's for a purpose, because this film is very much about living with the consequences of the mistakes you've made and the horrible things you've done, and being forced to confront them, and you can't get rid of them. You're stuck in Bruges. Like Bruges represents the mistakes you've made. Bruges represents this life you now have to live because of the things that you've done. So every asshole thing that Colin Farrell's character says at the beginning of the movie comes back to have a consequence at the end of the movie. Even he's rude to a fat guy. That comes back. He punches a guy in the face. That comes back. Even little things he says all come back. And it's just this cyclical thing because he made a huge mistake. And he doesn't know how to live with himself. They talk about suicide. They talk about just about the idea of heaven and hell, about it's all about consequences, even to the point where the script itself, it like every action has a consequence, and it carries over the theme. And I just find it so elegant and so beautiful in the way that it's written. Not to mention, it's funny because when it came out, it's still billed as a comedy. I mean, I think if you watch it the first time, the first half of the movie is a comedy. But once you find out what he did and you watch it again, it's not a comedy anymore. It looks like an action movie. There's only really one action sequence in it. It's not really an action movie. It's kind of a drama, but it's really funny in places. So it's not really a drama. It sort of defies definition. And I find that it just does it does what it does so well because Martin McDonagh is a phenomenal writer. He's a playwright. And he won the Academy Award for Best Short Film for a film called Six Shooter, which is very similar in nature to this, a lot more violent, and also has Brendan Gleeson in it. And then he went on to make this, and he went on to make Seven Psychopaths, which I also enjoyed, but wasn't as good as this movie. Because I just feel like In Bruges makes me feel like that is just brilliant writing, and the visuals are amazing. Just everything that is this movie. He really made use of the town. And there's a moment where right after we find out what Colin Farrell's character did, Ray. Right after we find out what Ray did, we cut to a painting of people being tortured in hell. And the minute before that, right before we found out what Ray did, it was really funny. We were laughing, we were having a good time, la 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 la. And then you're like, oh, fuck. And then we cut to hell. And then you cut to Ray. And the way you feel about Ray in that moment is 180 degrees away from the way you felt about him before you found out what he did. And it's just beautiful in everything that it accomplishes, but it makes you laugh. There's also like one badass lady in that movie who's pregnant. There's another like I don't like her very much lady in that movie, but whatever. She's the love interest. But she's kind of a horrible person. And it's funny too, because like, dude, Ralph Fiennes is fucking hilarious in this movie. There's a line where he's screaming, he's mad at his phone and he smashes it and he's yelling at it, and his wife comes in and she's like, "It's an animate fucking object, Harry!" And he goes, "You're an inanimate fucking object!" And then later on you see him go, I'm sorry, I called you an inanimate fucking object. And it's little, everybody feels it's like Die Hard, the way that Die Hard, every character has their own identity, even the minor ones in this movie as well. Every character has we only see that woman one time, but she gets us a cool line. So I love it, and that's what I have to say about that.
You have about 20 seconds left. You want to get that 20 seconds back from that Chewie stole from you.
Can you talk about John Goodman for 20 seconds?
Can you talk about virgins on prom night for 20 seconds?
It's a loose subject.
Oh.
Ew. I'm gonna call it.
Emily didn't say anything in those 20 seconds.
No, I was just enjoying this.
Enjoying might be the wrong word.
Enjoying just life.
All right, so 5 minutes on why Emily is wrong.
God, I didn't even talk about racist midgets.
That's where I was gonna go. I was seeing who was the little person in this.
Oh shit, what's his name? I don't know the actor's name.
I've never seen him in anything but this.
I know,
Think.
I
didn't
don't
I
think
could have
recognize him.
sworn he's been in other stuff. But
I mean, I wouldn't be
forget-
surprised, but I couldn't place him.
I couldn't remember.
for whatever
Great, he's so
reason.
crabby.
He is. He's a little bitch. But in the best way possible.
Yeah.
So okay, the movie. When I saw it, it was a real kind of left turn because I didn't expect. I thought it was going to be a very funny movie, and it is, but it's
I
really
think the
not.
advertising was off.
The trailer for this is famously horrible.
Oh yeah,
They didn't know what to do with it.
It's an
Yeah.
embarrassing trailer to watch.
Yeah, it's a rough watch. But the question that I have, is because it's such a jack of all trades. Like, how would you recommend this to somebody? Like, how does like Eric's movie? You can just recommend.
Yeah.
Oh, you're a fan of writing. You're a fan of movies. You can watch this one. What audience is this thing going for?
Me. I think if you're someone who likes your action to have subtext, like you really enjoy.
But you said it's not an action movie.
Wait, that doesn't. You said who do I recommend it for?
Fair. Okay.
I think if you're someone who likes to watch fight scenes and likes that kind of film, not Transformers, but something more like Terminator 2, something more like a movie with an action sequence that is about something, has meaning and has depth. So maybe you're somebody who likes action movies, but you don't really like the big budgety shit so much. That's who I'd recommend it for, because this movie feels actiony, even if it's not. But it has meaning to it. It's really thoughtful.
Okay.
So I don't know how big a pool of people that is. It has me in it. I know that much.
And the other one I was going to ask you is that this one's just pulling from our show. So in Free Fire, you mentioned you don't like rooting for people who are like completely dislikable, whereas everyone in this movie is completely dislikable.
I think they're only dislikable. I think when you talk about anti-heroes, you're talking like you have to give someone becomes immediately likable within their sphere. So like Harry, way worse than Ray. You hate Harry, and Harry's an asshole, but other people like Ray. Like Brendan Gleeson, Ken's character, Ken likes Ray. The pregnant lady likes Ray. And he's so sweet and innocent at times, and you see him break down. Like, you see that what he did really affects him. Like, he feels guilty. He didn't mean to do this. So I think he's an asshole, but he's like a redeemable asshole. He's someone who just needs some guidance, and that's why Ken decides to be that guidance for him. And he's not, and there are worse people around him to make him look better.
Okay. Anybody else?
For me, this movie leaves me a little cold. For maybe the reason why it made you feel like inspired to write, there's a sense of this is a very written movie. And when I first saw this movie, I didn't quite get that. But then going to Seven Psychopaths and then coming back to this, it was just like I kind of saw the tricks, the writing tricks, some of the more writerly moments that feel, a little bit not forced. Forced isn't the right word, but kind of like, yeah, I know you're typing this out, and very kind of constructed. And I think the twist saves it, but it's also it makes it a disjointed movie too. So there's a lot of things kind of that work and also kind of work against it, I think, for me. Yes?
However much I enjoy this film, I've always wondered why exactly Ray's Colin Farrell and Ken is the older guy that's with him.
Brendan Gleeson.
I understand that he has like a fatherly thing to him, but the level of sacrifice he's willing to give for Ray is like intense.
His life.
Like what?
Well, he's already been shot at that point.
Yeah, he could have survived.
I got better.
I think he would have been. I think he would have been okay if he hadn't.
Yeah, but
jumped.
Harry is determined to kill him. Like I think he realizes he's dying. But he does. I think it's because, again, the theme of dealing with the consequences of the decision you made. He's also a hitman. He's also killed people, and he feels he was responsible for Ray, and he failed.
Does he feel like he killed the kid because of he didn't manage Ray
I don't think he
better,
feels like he killed him, but I feel like he thinks he's responsible if he had done something differently. Like, and he's been here all this time. He's seen how Ray is suffering. He's seen how he cried.
But why would a hitman care about another hitman
He's a
suffering
human
that
being.
much?
They're still human beings. I think that's the point, is these two guys have done these horrible things, but at heart they're just still people.
But they're still a good guy.
I don't know about that. It's all it's context.
Brian's laughing because that's my argument against a lot of people right now.
Yeah.
Whenever
I don't think-
some guy does something terrible, and then their argument is, "But he's a really
No,
good
no, no.
guy."
I don't think In Bruges is trying to say either of these two dudes is a good guy.
Yeah.
That's it. That's it.
But
This is explaining why Brian laughs so loudly.
It was a good one. So I looked up the little person in this movie, and I realized what I remembered him from, and then I'm a little embarrassed.
Huh.
He played the giant bag of weed in Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle. He's also one of like 6 actors credited as Howard the Duck in Howard the Duck.
Oh man, I'd be
There's, like-
cranky too.
Yeah.
Jesus.
But there's like a bunch of them on there.
No, he was that old.
I don't think he is. I don't know why, but there's like it's literally there's 4 or 5 people on IMDb who are credited as Howard T. Duck.
Maybe that's just a joke in the little people acting community.
Yeah, well, we're all Howard the Duck. Fuck you.
Oh, it's like,
No, I'm Spartacus.
yeah, I was gonna say. It's just like, oh, that movie bombed. Who played Howard the Duck? And just 1,000 little people will stand up. We're all Howard the Duck.
It's a great tactic too, because now suddenly I feel bad.
Yeah.
I feel bad, like, oh, I'm so sorry. I disparaged you. You guys must have tried really hard.
It must have been really hot in that duck suit.
Yeah. Big effort, you guys. Big effort.
There's a movie in there somewhere, and it's
A
fantastic.
little Spartacus.
Copyright after the hype.
Okay, so Emily, you get to pick who goes next.
let's save Star Wars for last. Let's go with John next.
All right.
All right, John.
Cool.
Scott Pilgrim and the World,
Bleep bloop. Let's do it.
a.k.a. versus the World.
Versus the world.
All right, you ready to go?
Yeah.
All right, 5 minutes.
So I have a lot of favorite movies, and they've all changed over the years. And one of the most difficult questions I ever get asked is, what is your favorite movie? And that's always different.
Sorry.
Yeah. Well, no, but it makes me spend some time thinking about what really stands out to me in movies, what for me is like the best movie, and what those rules are. And in this case, it's actually a good exercise to kind of put this against other movies I like. And a lot of this boils down to connective tissue for me in this movie. Probably the most surface level and obvious stuff is the editing. As an editor, I've grown to like lots of construction in a way of just like style, cuts, cutaways, text over things. Those little things like are pleasing for me to watch on every level up in the brain. It just fires off all those like, I love this thing. And that's, a very surface level thing. And not a lot of movies have that. They're content to just go scene to scene to scene, some transitions. This is more like they could be walking. The conversation is the bridge in the scene now, but suddenly they're in 2 different places. And I'm like, oh, that's so cool. It just fires off that for me. On a slightly deeper level than that, as a person who likes video games, this speaks my language. And when I watch a movie that I would consider my favorite, there's a comfort level, like how you would consume comfort food. So I'm watching this, and there's bleeps and bloops in the background that I'm like, I'm familiar with those sounds. They might not be exactly attributed to like one particular game, but those 8-bit sounds in the background kind of texturing the movie, I'm just like, oh, this takes me back to a time when that was the soundtrack of my youth. These like limitations in hardware back in the day when you're fighting the Goombas as Mario, or you're fighting Ganon as Link. Like those sounds are all there, kind of texture. So like on that level, it speaks my language, and it does so in a way that actually manages to tell a story. And it's not just about those bleeps and bloops. That's just the mechanism that the story is being told in. So of course these guys are going to fight with a versus sign. Of course they're going to go all Street Fighter. Of course they're going to go anime. All these little things that I've just grown up liking and consuming. Of course this movie is going to do that. And it manages to do it without feeling pandering in the today kind of sense of pandering. Where it's like there is an element of that pandering, but this movie is like still interested in telling this story of this fun gimmick of the evil X's. And so like I really kind of attached to that. And it's usually kind of like, oh, this is my movie. I've even written about it, how it defines me. And this movie, going back to slightly surface level, is so quotable, and to the point where I quote it sometimes and don't realize it. I actually started writing down the quotes of the movie as they were happening, and I was like, oh shoot, I say that, or I think that, or I respond to situations with that. The bread makes you fat line, where he freaks out about that. I was like, oh, that's funny. But then you've got things like, well, what do you play? It's like, well, Zelda, Tetris is kind of a big question, but she's like, the question is in reference to music. And so if someone's like, well, what do you do as a kid? I'm not a musician or an athlete. So I was like, well, games. Like you can kind of relate to that kind of misconnection question. There's just so many. I wrote all of them, and it's a couple pages. And I like that in this movie, even though Scott Pilgrim is a jerk, there's that sense of, man, we were all really shitty when we were in our 20s. And, like, there's a sense of, like, yes, we've been shitty before, and then we've had to grow up. There's a sense of, like, kind of get with it, get better, become a better person. And the movie alludes to that with the power of self-respect. Like, he gets the sword and can face the boss. And I find that it's communicated with that game language. That's like, oh, I get it. Kind of bettering yourself as a person is like this, thing to overcome. And that seems silly if you're not into games, but that's a big part of that story. And just the sense of then before my time runs out, the opening credit sequence where they're sitting on the couch and Knives Chow is introduced to good music for the first time, and her world expands. And I'm like, every show I've been to in a stage or a venue has been that. The room has gotten bigger. I've done that rack focus in my mind, and it's the best visualization of that. And then just white noise, static images of just like the music taking over. And there's a lot of that in this, and the music is amazing. And I don't have enough time to go over like all the actors in there, but they are all a hoot. I can't decide which one I like the best because I keep thinking, well, this one's better than the other one, and this one's better. I like this one better. Oh, he's got this line. He's got the vegan thing. The vegan.
You're
please.
out of time.
Yeah, so it's easily my comfort favorite movie, and for me, beats the other movies because of it.
So, while that was a very passionate argument, yours is the only movie on the table that I actually have a lot of arguments against. So I'm sorry, but so. The first one out of the gate is, I think this movie, and I want to hear what you have to say about this one, is the prime example of movies going style over substance.
Well, but then is that a problem in this case?
because
I
there's
think
no substance. The substance is entirely, it's a guy fighting 7 other dudes in order to win a woman.
And a woman.
Yeah.
Also fights a woman.
Oh, and a woman,
yeah,
sorry. But
X's.
Sorry, whatever. Fighting 7 other people in order to win a prize. Like, there's very little here, and
She's
it's just
literally a trophy.
yeah.
And the other woman that he fights is defeated by an orgasm.
So there's some very problematic storytelling things.
He
in
also
this movie.
doesn't treat Knives all that great.
No, like he
He's
cheats
a
on his
shit,
girlfriend.
yeah.
He's a horrible person. But beyond that, just so they take this really kind of negative story and negative like ideals and package it in the most glitzy and glammy movie possible. I own it. I'm staring at my Blu-ray.
Oh, the glitz and grime is great.
But so what do you have to say about
Chris
like
Evans is great.
so the idea of style over substance when the substance is so, I don't want to say rotten, but kind of like this movie.
Well, I think it's what I didn't get a chance to get to with as an adaptation, because it was Edgar Wright doing it versus the source material, because I've read all the books and they really just kind of do that to the nines of him being a shitty person. And the substance is arguably about the same. I think because there's a sense of like kind of favoring that style over the substance in this case, when there's some problematic elements, it kind of lessens that. I think it makes it more of about the experience versus kind of those more problematic elements. And I think in those moments, it's being able to latch on to him kind of eventually growing, like them kind of like recovering from the dust after the dust is settled and kind of like, sorry, move on. And
But he doesn't move on. They
What
end up
does he
together.
grow into exactly?
Well, whatever, like, we don't get to see that because that's the end, like at the very end of the movie.
But he just wins. Like, what exactly? How did he grow?
I think his apology was heartfelt, and he delivered it in a way that he didn't deliver any lines in the movie previous.
What did he apologize for?
He at the end of the movie, he apologizes to both of them, and it is. I agree. It is a sincere moment.
And I think
Both
the way
women?
yeah, to both of them for lying to them and being a total dickbag.
Okay.
and the way he does it is very different to how he talks in the beginning of the movie. For most of the movie, and this is something I actually picked up on this most recent watch, he's very whiny and very not assertive. He's very passive in his tone of voice. And by the end of that, when he's apologizing, he's just like, he didn't say this literally, but damn it, I'm sorry, and here's what I did wrong. And that redo, I think, for me, saves that whole thing, him getting that extra life, kind of that second chance to be like, oh, here's what I did wrong, and kind of just from point to point, kind of see what he did wrong. And I liked his apology to Kim, and I think that was also important and something that any other director might not have added in there. But she was the most hurt by him, and they addressed that the least until the end. And he apologized to her. So I feel like, yeah, there are those problems, but it also goes to great pains to create that apology, that sense of apology, and do it in that language that, like, someone like me who does video games would probably grok a little bit more than just a long speech.
The apology is nice, but all three of them still, like, their self-esteems were kind of wrapped up into his want of them. And that never seemed a lesson. Even with the apology, they didn't really move on. They were still like, "Oh, Scott, you're so great," which didn't really make them grow at all.
Well, yeah, I mean that is fair.
I was just thinking this kind of a bummer because on our table I realize, and I'm part of this, is like we all picked movies that are very dude centric. I mean, and Scott Pilgrim vs. the World actually has more female characters than the other, but you still have this problematic thing where there's they're all about him.
Yeah, and I think there's just, I mean, you can't excuse some of those things now, especially since we're very much attuned to the problematic elements. And I think for me, what works is that it does go to great pains to at least address them, or at least start that process of apology, of change, of bettering yourself, even if it doesn't pay that off and it doesn't exactly work.
So
I think
really quick before you get to the end of this thing. So granted, he apologizes. That's great and everything like that. How do you defend the ending though? Because even though he apologizes, she still takes him back. Like that's for me the one hell-worthy trespass.
I'm actually still conflicted about that because I've seen the secondary ending that they shot for the movie where he stays with knives.
That was the first version I saw. I saw it at a test screening at the ArcLight, like right when I first moved here, and they had the ending where he goes back with knives, and I was like, oh, that's cool. And then in many ways, like, it makes a lot more sense, I suppose, but it's also still kind of regression.
Oh, I totally yell about it. I'd be like, "You're back with knives? He's a cheater, knives.
Yeah.
He's already
That
shown
was
us
knives.
that."
Yeah.
That had that
It's
you
total
said it really
regression.
well. That had that weird effect of, like, even though that was the better ending that I liked, there was still something that just didn't.
Yeah, he
Didn't
should
quite-
be alone.
Yeah,
That's pretty much
That's
it.
the
I
end.
really
Once a
wanted
cheater,
knives.
always a cheater.
This is all about people like fighting for something. I wanted knives to like just be like, "Fuck you,"
Fight for
you know?
herself.
And yeah.
If the three girls linked arms and went, "We don't need you, Scott," and walked away,
Yeah.
there we go. There's some progression for their characters.
And then he actually could grow. 'Cause
Yeah.
he's,
Yeah.
so that's my major complaint.
Yeah.
In the movie. Now, I realize I was more harsh on that one than the other one.
no.
I
But I understand where that's coming
Something
from.
that's not about like analyzing the movie so much, but I do remember the weekend this came out because I was in line to watch The Expendables. It was The Expendables and Under the Tuscan Sun and Scott Pilgrim. Why the fuck did they release it that weekend?
That
I
was
don't
such
know. I think it came in number 7 or 8 at the box
Yeah,
office.
it did not do well.
that didn't do well at all.
Yeah.
Well,
I
I
mean,
mean,
it
the
also
entire
was-
audience for this movie was watching The Expendables.
It's also true.
But also, it was near the oversaturation of what's his face,
Michael Cera.
Yeah.
and people were starting to really turn on him.
I don't
And
think
fans
he's
of the- Sorry,
go
go
ahead,
ahead.
buddy. Well,
Oh,
I just don't think he's a very good Scott Pilgrim. you
No,
know?
that's exactly what I was gonna say.
Because I love this movie, and I'm with you. There are parts of this movie that just give me chills, like that opening where it turns into like a Guitar Hero style scroll. I'm like, that is one of my favorite moments in a movie. I've
I've been trying to steal that scene so I can
Brendan
actually
Routh's
post it.
vegan thing is one of my favorites.
Oh yeah,
I
and
love,
that's
I love
just
when they started
hilarious.
playing the Zelda music in the hallway. I was like,
Did you catch
Yeah.
the Donkey Kong beat in the club fight? That doodle doodle doodle
Well,
doodle. It's
no,
like,
because I'm not a gamer, but
yeah.
but
No,
I
like,
respect it.
I
God
get
damn
that.
it.
Like, there's that. Like, oh wait, I know this game. Okay, like, yeah.
But I
it's-
really like the books, and I think the thing about the books with Scott Pilgrim and those is that he's got a charm, and he's likable and cool in those books where he can get away with some nasty shit. And you can kind of understand why people would put up with so much of his crap. And to be sure, he's a character that has a lot of problems, and he's a total ass in many ways. And I don't know who you could have cast in this besides Michael Cera, but I just feel like Michael Cera is like, he comes off a little too like Asperger-y to be like, women are gonna literally kill people.
You kind of do the Anne thing with him, like him.
Yeah, a little bit.
guys
Which
all-
is funny because Anne's in the movie and she's cooler than he is.
all three of us went for movies with asshole protagonists.
I know.
I was
It makes
well,
me
all
worried.
4 of you have an asshole protagonist, which we'll get to in a second. But no, I agree. Like,
I was fighting words.
I love Scott Pilgrim, but it is one of those movies that I
Yeah.
love with like I love, but
Yeah.
I love
it's
Star
such
Star.
a great movie.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it's got a lot of footnotes. And it came out before
fun
the
to
last
watch.
book.
oh, it's a blast.
It kind of has the same problem as Game of Thrones, where
Yeah.
it came out before the story was actually done.
Which I may get flack for, but like I when I finally read this story, I was like, oh, I don't.
It
like,
kind of ends in a similarly.
It ends in a similar way,
disappointing
but then like Gideon had this like weird crystal tube of all of his exes, and they were feeding energy, and it was like this weird, completely anime-esque thing. I was just like, what is this? If you check that part of the book, it's so weird, and then you're like, I like the movie part better.
I
pretty
just feel
creepy.
like the guy who wrote Scott Pilgrim has a lot of issues with past relationships and can never really move on. I've never read them.
Speaking of
Oh, you
never
like
moving on, how about Star Wars?
Oh man, that was from the judge.
boy.
Be worried.
Are you
like your
telling me to
odds.
move on?
Sure.
Star Wars is one of the things that brought us together.
I know.
Quote another Disney movie. Let it go.
Oh, don't
Star Wars isn't.
tarnish.
It's not. It's not really a Disney movie. It was made before it was Disney.
I know.
Disney does not
I know.
own Star Wars.
I know.
I don't care how much money they put on the property of Star Wars.
I know.
But
They
Leia
don't
is a
own
Disney
Star Wars.
princess now.
Huh?
Leia is a Disney princess.
don't
now.
care.
Oh.
Yeah.
To be
do.
fair, I'm trying to come at this one as negative as I can because
Fuck
this
your
one
Star
it
Wars.
is so stacked in her favor because it's fucking Star Wars.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
That does seem. Yeah.
yeah, so like I said,
Again, was not
Star
allowed
Wars
to
is
pick
a piece
Terminator
of
2.
shit
Come on.
and it was made cheaply. All right, here we go with your 5 minutes of why Star Wars is supposedly good.
Way to,
Supposedly good.
way to frame the discussion.
Star Wars sucks.
All right. So everyone's gotten, who's ever listened to this podcast, my little speech about how my life was changed by Star Wars. Because it was. There's no... I can never fully describe that emotion. I've never really had it since. I don't know if I will ever have it again, of sitting in a theater watching something that I thought I knew what I was watching. Because I never grew up with Star Wars. I was 14. I went into it because I'm like, oh, they're bringing him back. This looks like fun. Let's go. And then I'm sitting there and my back and my back, the back of my head, my hair is tingling. I'm seeing something I've never seen before or felt before. And that's what I got from Star Wars the first time I saw it, which is hard for a film to do in general. And then for a film to do that came out before I was born and to see it in the 90s, like, how does that happen? Who does that happen to? I mean, and it has happened not just to me, but to many other people with Star Wars, to a point that Disney spent billions of dollars to own it and are going to be pumping out movies every year, hoping to make as much money as possible, which in my mind right now is going to possibly spoil it. Well, whatever. I'm not going to go into that tirade. But as a movie, it's got so many defining things. It is a hero's journey. It is a story about family, friends, conquering evil. It's a believing in yourself, finding the people that you can work with to achieve your goals. You don't just do it yourself. You need a team. There's so many messages in here. Screw Peter Parker. Luke is the ultimate, like, everyman, young person that you can relate to. He's whiny. He doesn't really care about anything. He just wants to go have fun and hang out with his friends and shoot wombats. He's searching for purpose without really even knowing that he wants a purpose. He just doesn't want to be at the farm anymore. And then you have the smuggler who is seasoned and he's kind of cynical and he's just in it for the money, but he really has a heart down in there and he just needs to meet the right people to bring it out of him. You have the princess who's born into privilege but has a cause that she fully believes in and is willing to sacrifice everything to get it. A lot of times, especially back in the 70s, women were there just to be saved and to have cleavage. And then instead you get a woman who's just kind of, she's not waiting to be saved. She's waiting for her death. And she was content with it at that moment. And then they come in, they try to save her, not very good at it. Then she saves them. And it's all about how once the three of them to get together, where you have the innocence, you have the cynic, and then you have the passion. And the three of them together is just like the perfect combination. And they together win in the end. And it's all a celebration about them. Yes, you have the droids, you have the Wookiee, you have Chewbacca, you have the Rebel Alliance and everything, but it's all about those three people coming together and succeeding. And then later on you find all the history about their father and everything, and then the Force. But it's all very deep, and it really pulls into things that psychologically anyone can relate to. This movie had so much impact on science, on culture, on media, on how you made movies, how you marketed movies, the rights that directors had to their movies. everything. It
Toys.
changed everything. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, this is the first Fox didn't have faith in it, so they gave the rights to marketing to George Lucas. He made some freaking t-shirts, people bought them, and then he's just like, all right, just make all this other stuff, people keep buying it. He made so much money. No one had done that before. It was amazing. This movie changed the game on so many levels and continues to touch people beyond the oversaturation of products we have right now, where there's so many fans that are just about the things of Star Wars.
You're wearing Star Wars themed headphones.
Yes, I
on
am.
Your head.
I'm not completely out of fault, because yes, I do enjoy buying Star Wars stuff, but outside of just the general merchandising, there's still people who just in their souls feel Star Wars. Like, it's an emotion. It's a thing. Like, you can't, once you have it, it never goes away. It's why I get really annoyed with people sometimes, and then a lot of times I just can't talk to anyone about Star Wars anymore because I get so mad, because it's like, it's not just about the product. I'm not going to watch the trailer. I'm going to wait because I want that feeling again that Sorry. I got for a moment.
This is why Star Wars sucks. It's making Chewie cry.
How dare it?
It's emotional. I wasn't expecting to do that. I'm sorry.
You have
That's my
10
thing.
seconds to stop crying.
This is your favorite movie. Stop having an emotional response to it.
I mean, even last night when I was making my robe, I was just like,
You're out of time.
it felt good to be making something while watching Star Wars. Now tell me why it's bad.
Well, hold on.
As you
I gotta-
cry at your husband. Fine, tell me why my movie's terrible.
So,
I'm crying because I'm worried Disney's gonna fuck it up.
so I guess my first question is Star Wars: A New Hope your favorite Star Wars?
The thing is, I don't have a favorite Star Wars film when you really get down to it. I have a favorite moment.
Favorite moment?
And that moment's in Jedi. But
What moment is that?
the moment when Darth Vader is taunting Luke about trying to convert
sister.
Leia, and then Luke goes dark for just a moment because of how mad he would be at the proposition of him trying to convert Leia.
Well, that camera also does a pan on them on the lower level as he's
it's so
letting
good.
into his anger. It's really good.
Such a great moment.
But I guess I bring that up because Star Wars itself had a huge impact. But then when I've revisited the movie again and again and again and again and again, it's always the good place. It's where it starts. But then for me, like Empire Strikes Back is my favorite Star Wars movie. So it's interesting that, and I'm admittedly reaching for straws here, but like this has more of a cultural impact, but it's not necessarily your favorite moment in the Star Wars, all of it thing.
No, but you can't have any of the other things without this.
And to be fair, the one that got her crying was the one she was just talking about.
Yeah.
'Cause that
So-
was the first
Yeah.
thing. But, I mean, getting real, I mean, they don't give the Wookiee an award. I mean, that's bullshit, right?
They never let
I
the
never
Wookiee
understood
win.
why.
I mean, I'm just saying, a perfect movie, the Wookiee would have gotten an award.
Yeah.
Also, can we? Okay, all right. Let's get down to brass tacks here because the stupidity. Okay, first of all, putting the plans in a robot, and then when they find out, oh, it's probably a trap. She's even like, okay, blah, 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 going back. All right. Hang on a second.
Star Wars is very important to Emily as well.
Okay, so but
She
seriously,
should get a tattoo about it or
when
something.
when they leave the Death Star, and she's just like, they're tracking us. There's no other explanation for the ease of our escape. Oh well. They don't attempt to not be tracked. They just kind of go, we'll lead them right to the rebel base that I just sacrificed my home planet to protect. It's like what? Okay, just come on, guys. Dumb. Star Wars is bullshit.
And then there's also,
And the Wookiee didn't get an
And the
award.
but then also is like, is in this galaxy as presented by A New Hope, is there like one woman for every 3,572 men? Like, so there is some of these things that like also don't age well. And
Not a whole lot of people. Are there any people of color in Star
how'd they
Wars?
have babies?
There's some black people, and there's
William D.
one
Williams.
Asian
Yeah.
person, I think, at some point.
No, I mean, but in
Well,
the
he didn't
first
show up till the
movie,
second one.
maybe.
Yeah.
Billy D.
Yeah.
But he
'Cause they
wasn't
put
in
them up in
he
the
wasn't in Star
clouds.
Wars. He was in Empire Strikes Back.
Right.
Yeah, in the actual A New Hope,
Okay, there's a lot of people in rubber suits. One of them might have been black.
they
Well, and there's one thing that always comes back to me is that there's a lot of this amazing stuff that you mentioned that I'm also projecting onto this first movie when I started getting those feelings for like Empire, for Return of the Jedi, after I've seen the whole. of it, like the completeness of those 3 movies. So I mean, yeah, for me, like if there was one nitpick, and that's the major one, is like all that magic was spread out across the 3 movies and not necessarily concentrated on one for me. And that's just my opinion, but
Thing is, you don't have any of that magic without the 3 of them getting together.
well, right.
Those movies would have still happened in various forms, but it's the 3 of them together that matter.
But then I guess without the other 2 movies coming after it, the phenomenon would have fizzled out.
I beg to differ on that one, not just because I want to defend Star Wars, because that's my instinct. But you go back to 1977 when this thing came out, people saw it all the fucking time. If they had free time, they're at the theater seeing Star Wars. Like the amount of like just impact of this one movie, I don't think would have gone away.
It is one
whether
of
or
the
not there
best
was sequels.
episodes
Yeah.
of that 70s show.
Yeah, like it was true, but it was
But I think
such
it-
a atom bomb of like movie fandom that I don't think the sequels were icing on the cake
Brian,
that turned out great.
Tear it
but-
down. Come on.
Well, I told you the Wookiee didn't get an award. It's fucking bullshit. That's my
Are we
number
going
one
to talk about that Leia doesn't wear a bra or
Yeah, it does
anything?
not wear
thing. No,
a bra.
that works.
It
out
doesn't
really
make
well
any
for me.
sense
Underwear
that
in
she gets
space.
completely wet inside the garbage chute, but you can't see through her dress. Come on, guys.
Yeah, I just go
It's
with
a
the
white
force on
dress.
that one.
I like Star Wars.
I like that Chewie's trying to give the movie some faults.
I mean, there's a lot of things to make fun of. I enjoy making fun of it while I watch it in my brain,
I
while
love-
also being fully invested.
The thing is, it's a lot easier for me to make fun of when I'm watching it than when I'm thinking about it. Because when I think about it, it's all like rose-colored glass and like, oh, it's so great.
But perhaps the biggest strength for it, and I don't want to say this, but it's like when you think about it critically, there are a lot of good things it's doing and a lot of things that it broke the mold for. So like at the same time, that still has its problems.
Talk about how dated it is with its hairstyles. Come on, guys.
We're out of time.
No, Lucas fixed those in the extent, like the newer version.
Look,
Yeah.
look, don't talk about those.
No, those are the only
CGI
versions that right now
dreadlocks.
exist. Those are the only versions that exist right now.
Bums me out.
That's not true. We got it sitting right fucking there. Okay, so we have to have a winner today, and oof,
We all win.
I'm never ever going to give participation trophies.
Again, everyone gets a gold star.
Nope. Gold stars for one person who wins, and I
Man.
don't know who the
I
fuck
really
it
hope
is.
some people write in, like on our
Yeah.
thing at some point. This
Which
first
thing?
time to write in when they listen to this episode, be like, "Stupid Chewie crying, what a sap" or something.
Yeah,
like.
you guys should write
Well,
in. and
She's
tell
just
us what you-
using
who-
her
who you
tears to
think
make
won.
you vote for her.
Well, here's the thing. Star
movie
Wars
has
is
guns
not
in
going
it.
to win because I believe that Chewie tried to manipulate us with tears.
I didn't do it on purpose.
Oh.
What a twist! What a after the hype thrones twist!
The statement I didn't get to finish is that I almost got that exact feeling while watching Rogue One.
Fucking great movie.
So that's why I started getting teary, is because I
You're thinking of
hadn't
Rogue One?
had that before.
Well, you should have done Rogue One today. Maybe you
Rogue
would have
One's so
won.
good.
Yes.
But yeah, so Star Wars doesn't win because I don't like being manipulated.
Fine.
If you'd made it through without crying, I was going to be surprised.
I love movies, but I hate being manipulated.
I am my own man. Okay, so after that, trying to think like so way I usually try to judge is what do people have the least amount of like comebacks for, and sadly everyone at the table had something to say about Scott Pilgrim, so that one also does not win. So that brings me down to In Bruges and Barton Fink.
They're, if I may, they're very much the same movie.
They are not the same movie, bro.
They're very much the same movie. Los Angeles equals Bruges.
No.
Unlikable characters
Yeah,
with a
that's true.
count.
Careful!
Existential
Is this
dread.
manipulation?
I feel like I'm being manipulated.
I don't know what you're talking
You know
about.
my feelings about manipulation. Shit, I don't know.
Your movie does not have Colin Farrell like insulting fucking
Alright.
fat people.
Here's what we're gonna do. You're both gonna
Fucking Bruges?
You're both going to get 30 seconds, because that's the amount of time I like, to tell me why the other movie is total fucking garbage. You guys ready? Who wants to? Chewie,
Eric
pick.
looks so uncomfortable with
I
this.
know.
I like In Bruges.
Take everything and say the opposite. So, Chewie, you get to pick who goes first, because you're the first one out.
I'm going to go with Eric so that he can kill his pain.
All right, you ready to go?
Sure.
Go for it.
It is a fine movie, but I think that as far as dark comedies go, the Coen brothers just came first, you know? I think Martin McDonagh's a fantastic writer, but I think that his plays, as strong as they are definitely stronger than his screenplays. And I think that In Bruges just has a bit of a problem with tone. It feels inconsistent.
All right, there you go. All right, so Emily now gets 30 seconds to say why a movie she's never fully finished is a terrible movie.
Well, I think that kind of says it.
All right, Emily, you ready?
Yeah.
All right, go.
Yeah, I meant to watch it again before this podcast and I ran out of time, and also I was kind of like, I don't wanna, because I did watch some of it and I just got, this is so self-indulgent. It's so writers writing about writing, and I can't unless it's got like something really cool happening. And if something does happen cool later in the movie, then I need to see it sooner because it lost my interest before we got there. And I don't know, my movie's awesome and fun, and you laugh and you cry and you feel moved and you learn something.
All right, that's it. Well, Eric, I'm sorry. I mean, the first argument you had was, it's a fine movie.
And Emily just spits all over the table.
This needs to become a video
I think
podcast.
that's the first natural spit take I've ever seen.
I need a towel. JK, I don't.
Okay, I had to wait to
There's a
swallow
little
it.
bit on my phone.
It grazed me only.
I'm so sorry.
So we're
What
going to go...
happened?
Do I get
I
superpowers
picked
now?
the wrong moment to swallow some water.
Oh, that's what she said.
Was she really
So
thirsty?
long story short,
I'm sorry. Did I get your Fruit Loop donut?
Well,
that thing's garbage.
he's
anyway.
not going to do it anymore.
No, I will finish it
Ooh,
after this.
that's
Yeah.
that's depressing.
That's
And now it's
He
even
said.
more soggy.
So our winner today will be In Bruges
Yes!
with Barton Fink coming in a strong second place and the other two movies losing.
Fine.
Take that, Star Wars, your bazillion dollars.
That's what we get for manipulating me.
We influenced NASA.
I want that shirt. We influenced NASA.
What about
Would it
the
just say raspberry?
what about the satellite Fink that's going around the Earth right now?
It's weird. My favorite video game of all time, Monkey Island 2: LeChuck's Revenge, references Barton Fink almost in the immediate.
Really? That's strange.
Guybrush Threepwood is telling his story to two pirates at a
Why didn't
campfire.
you say that when I was trying to come up with
I
defenses?
didn't want to defend your.
Yeah, I'm trying to win here,
But
man.
he talks to two pirates named Bart and Fink, and they always
Aw.
refer to him as Bart and Fink
That's pretty cool.
in the
Aw.
text in the game.
That's
Oh, and then there's that great Simpsons joke where all the kids are like, "This guy's sneaking us into an R-rated movie. It's something called Barton Fink," and then they all drive down the road going, "Barton Fink, Barton Fink."
Oh boy.
Yeah,
all
a
right.
bunch of teenage boys wouldn't be so into Barton Fink.
Maybe at the end with the hallway on fire and stuff.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
No spoilers. You have to actually watch the movie first.
Okay, so that's our 200th episode.
Oh, we did it, guys.
We did it. We made it to
Wow.
200, and we didn't die.
Congrats.
Although it did end with John having diabetes and then getting spit on. So
Somebody choked to
If
death.
ever you wanted to know our feelings on afflicted people,
That's almost kind of like he's a true American.
Word.
it's perfect.
it was a perfect metaphor for America.
It really was.
You have diabetes and we're spitting on you.
Yeah.
I'm
Andrew
dying.
tastes in movies.
Take
Oh
that.
boy. All right, so follow
Take
us.
that in your ACA and smoke it.
Follow us on Twitter, ATH_podcast. Go to our website, www.athpod.com, for all of our fun stuff, including our Tip of the Brain game. You can find all of our Spotify playlists there. You can find all of our episodes, our articles, when we'll start writing them again soon, hopefully. Yeah.
Shit, yes.
Yeah. We got a ton of stuff going on there, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And then tune in next week for our 201st episode, which is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume Dose.
Yay!
Should be a lot of fun.
A new season, a new look,
It's a lot
Yeah.
of
a
colors.
new ATH.
But you can't see the colors because this is
'Cause
audio.
This is an audio podcast.
Unless you're those people that have that one condition I don't remember.
Where you-
Synesthesia?
Well, let's spit on them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Congrats on
Now
200
I'm crying. Like, literally,
episodes.
my
Thank
eyes are
you.
watering.
Way to
go,
I'm
team.
so hard.
we made it.
Congrats.
All right.
Triple congrats.
Bye, everybody.
And hold on one second. Eric, where's the website where they can find your lovely writings?
Oh, you could go to floodmagazine.com.
Floodmagazine.com.
Articles there.
Sweet. Cool. Thank you so much for coming out for 200.
Oh, what a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Of course. All right. Bye.
Bye.